Good morning. Welcome to the School of Global and International Studies. My name is Lee Feinstein. I'm Dean of the school. And welcome to Visions of Development, the inaugural conference of the Randall L. and Deborah F. Tobias Center for Innovation and International Development, which we also formally launch today. Over 2 days and 5 panels, leading scholars and practitioners will join with our faculty in conversation with you, our students, and our other guests to address the pressing global development challenges we face, from global health to nation building in Afghanistan and global inequality, among others. We'll evaluate what's worked, what hasn't, and why. We'll discuss the research needed to encourage the most effective development and the best ways to measure progress. And by bringing scholars and practitioners together, we'll demonstrate the usefulness and importance of bridging the gap between the academy and policymaking, a big part of what we seek to do at SGIS. We're nearing an important anniversary, which in the current political climate will likely go unmarked. On January 20th, 1949, nearly 70 years ago, President Harry Truman launched the U.S. Foreign Aid Program. He called for a bold new program for the improvement and growth of underdeveloped areas. The usage of underdeveloped was new, the invention of a speechwriter, and it was revolutionary in 2 ways. First, it redivided the world into those countries that were affluent and those that were not yet affluent. It meant that the poorer 2/3 of the world were entitled to progress. Truman used develop as a transitive verb, not as something that might happen on its own, but which could and should be made to happen. We are far removed from the optimism of 70 years ago, not for want of accomplishment, but for want of political will. Standards of living have risen around the world. Diseases, smallpox, polio, have nearly been conquered. Levels of literacy and education continue to go up. And while it doesn't always feel this way, levels of violence have gone down. But development as an idea and a policy is in crisis. Looking through the magazine stand at Barnes & Noble, you could get the impression that aid is a thing of the past. The Journal of International Affairs has an article, The Tragedy of Humanitarianism. American Affairs, a quarterly, features the development delusion and the development industrial complex. The feeling is echoed in new books, such as Andrew Brooks' The End of Development. But despite this, development demonstrably is not ending. Our Indiana University Lilly School of Philanthropy's annual Index of Philanthropy shows that government aid is up to $147 billion a year, the highest level since it's been keeping count, since 1992. And private financial flows of capital investment, remittances and philanthropy, was $801 billion, or 8 times the amount in 1992. Nonetheless, humanitarianism is a policy that dare not speak its name. Catastrophic poverty and its effects still excite official generosity, but human need must be framed as a national security crisis or as disaster relief. The simpler idea, Truman's idea, that needs are dire, that improvement is possible, and that great nations, like the United States, have an obligation to help, has been eroded by a criticism, not always unwarranted, that external aid is by nature inefficient. Government-to-government assistance, well-meaning donations, gifts of food, drugs, or technology do not always produce the desired effects and may actually do harm. This is where the Tobias Center can help. The aim of the center and this conference is to open a dialogue between humanitarian practitioners and researchers in academia around the issue of how scarce development resources can be used to best effect. For too long, really since the 1970s, university researchers have positioned themselves as critics of the development project, distancing themselves from the difficult dilemmas and everyday work of humanitarian assistance. This closure has been one-sided. NGOs, foundations, and governments rely on and hire as contractors academic economists and social scientists. But academics rarely write for the practitioner community, nor do they seek to learn from the insights of those with on-the-ground experience. That is why I am so glad to see veterans of the development community here representing decades of practical knowledge in a wide variety of fields in collaboration with the academic community. Reclaiming the idea and promise of development, improving development assistance and making it more effective, that is the ambition of our center. And for the center and the work that it will enable, we have some people to thank. Deborah Tobias is an accomplished global business leader, a pioneer in the tech space, who contributed to the optimization of the internet at a pivotal moment in its growth and expansion. I know President Mcrobbie will have more to say, but it was Deborah's idea to mark the 75th birthday of Randy that was the spark of this important gift. Randy Tobias was the first Deputy Secretary of State with responsibility for overseeing foreign assistance. He put into action in that role the principle that development done right is not a boutique item or peripheral, but an essential element of effective and principled foreign policy. President Mcrobbie will have more to say about that as well. The gift of Deborah and Randy, thanks to their generosity, establishes the Center for Innovation for International Development as building on Indiana University's long and great tradition in this field. It will support the research of faculty colleagues who we will see in action today, as well as supporting students with scholarships and fellowships. I'd like also to thank my colleague and friend, Dean Nick Cullather, Professor of History and International Studies, for his role as Executive Director of the Steering Committee of the Tobias Center and for his intellectual leadership of this project. And I'd like to thank my faculty colleagues, among others, Sarah Bowerly-Dansman, Jessica Steinberg, Yan Long, Stephen Masakura, and Jesse O'Reilly, who you'll see at work today. And please join me in welcoming Senator Richard Lugar. In his 6 terms as senator, he was an ardent supporter of development assistance, and he continues to be a leading global voice for food security through the work of the Lugar Center, and I'll have a chance to say a bit more about that later on in advance of the keynote address that Senator Lugar will deliver later today. I'd also like to thank and acknowledge Patrick O'Meara, Professor and Vice President Emeritus and renowned scholar of international development. Patrick, are you here? And Dr. Emily Stern, who has led the organization of this event. Is Emily here? She's outside leading, so we can thank her in her absence. And finally, and most important, the reason I'm here today, which is to introduce my boss. This center, and indeed the School of Global and International Studies, would not be without the vision, leadership, and determination of President Michael Mcrobbie. President Mcrobbie has built on this university's historic commitment to global studies and projected it forward to establish Indiana University's future as a global leader in the 21st century, and in keeping with what Secretary of State John Kerry said when he inaugurated this building in 2015, describing Indiana University as one of America's great global universities. I thank President Mcrobbie, after a long trip to Asia, from which he returned yesterday, for being here at 9 a.m. to open this event, a sign of his commitment and support for this endeavor and for his leadership. It's fitting that President Mcrobbie, like Ambassador Tobias, Senator Lugar, and Congressman Hamilton, another one of our distinguished faculty members, has been recognized by the International Center of Indianapolis as International Citizen of the Year, which honors those who have made outstanding contributions to the globalization of Indiana. And to ensure that our university's commitment continues, President Mcrobbie has overseen the launch of the ongoing For All Bicentennial Campaign and other strategic initiatives to secure the role of this university as one of America's and the world's leading global research universities, securing our place for the next century. So please join me in thanking and welcoming the 18th President of Indiana University, Michael Mcrobbie.
Well, thank you very much, Dean Feinstein, for those kind words. I appreciate them very much. And I'm very pleased to welcome all of you here today to this Visions of Development conference, which is the inaugural conference of the Tobias Center for Innovation in International Development. And I want to extend a special welcome to all of the scholars and practitioners who have traveled from across the country and around the world to share their expertise with us over the next 2 days. Indiana University has a rich tradition of international engagement that goes back more than 100 years. As part of that tradition, the university has contributed in substantial ways to some of the most pressing problems facing the world. Today, developing countries around the world face enormous challenges, including threats to food security, to energy security, and to human health, as well, of course, as the consequences of climate change. Globally, more than 1 billion people live in extreme poverty, and nearly all of them suffer from hunger. Finding innovative ways to enhance development in these countries, as the Tobias Center will do, will contribute enormously to the alleviation of these problems. Today, all major public and private research universities in the United States are expected and indeed have a responsibility to use their expertise and their new knowledge that they generate to contribute solutions to some of the world's most important social problems. One way that Indiana University has sought to do this is through many widely varied international development projects that have truly spanned the globe. And the majority of these projects have involved providing technical assistance designed to create or reform and strengthen key institutions in many of these countries. Most often these institutions have been universities, teacher training institutions, or research programs, but they have also included parliaments, government training centres, ministries of education, and more recently, national information technology capabilities. From Thailand to Germany, from Africa to Macedonia, these projects have spanned the globe. These include the major role played by IU's 11th President, Herman B. Wells, just after the Second World War in establishing the Free University of Berlin, which has grown to become one of Germany's finest educational institutions. This history also includes the role IU played in Thailand in establishing the Institute for Public Administration at Thammasat University in Bangkok in the mid-1950s. The IPA at Thammasat played a major role in strengthening the infrastructure of a nation then in the early stages of economic and social transformation. A decade later, IU played a leading role in the establishment of Thailand's National Institute for Development Administration, known as NIDA, which has risen to become one of the nation's leading educational institutions and one that has trained thousands of Thai citizens for service across Thailand and around the world. And I was very honoured to have been in Bangkok last year as the only invited non-Thai in recognition of IU's vital role in establishing NIDA to help celebrate its 50th anniversary. In the mid-1980s, as the international community was beginning to recognise and renounce the brutality of the apartheid regime in South Africa, IU joined forces with the South African Council on Higher Education to assist talented black South African students who wished to pursue a university education but who are having difficulty obtaining entrance to South Africa's leading universities due to the enormous disadvantages and prejudice that they faced under apartheid. IU also helped to address a great need in South Africa for trained professionals with expertise in writing laws by spearheading the creation of the legislative drafting program for South Africa. In the 1990s, the Kyrgyz Republic had declared its independence from the Soviet Union and was establishing itself as a stable sovereign state. IU was actively engaged in supporting higher education in that part of the world. In 1997, IU was involved in the development of the American University of Central Asia in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, and we have remained closely involved with that institution to this very day. And in 2001, ethnic tensions in Macedonia led to a year-long armed conflict. In that same year, IU was selected to assist Macedonia's Southeast European University, known as C University, in establishing its curriculum and establishing all the administrative structures of the university. We continue to work with this university in the years that followed to promote economic development through the university and in the region, to introduce modern curricula and to expand faculty and student exchanges. And I was very pleased to visit Macedonia twice, first to represent IU at the opening of C University just weeks after the civil war there had ended, and again in 2011 to help celebrate the 10th anniversary of C University, now established as a thriving institution of over 5,000 students. More recently, the catastrophic outbreak of Ebola in Liberia underscored the importance of IU's efforts to help strengthen public health and the medical infrastructure there. In 2001, IU established a partnership with the University of Massachusetts Medical School and 2 Liberian institutions to build up Liberia's capacity for meeting healthcare needs. And of course, the heroic efforts of IU School of Medicine alumnus Kent Brantley, who we just awarded the Distinguished Alumnus of the Year award a few weeks ago, played a central role on the front lines in addressing the Ebola epidemic in Liberia in 2014, and I believe these, of course, are known to many of you. IU's Mao School of Law has also helped to rebuild Liberia's legal education system and guided constitutional reform. IU's Ostrom Workshop in Political Theory and Policy Analysis, founded by the late IU faculty members, Nobel Economics Laureate Eleanor Ostrom and her husband Vincent, has also assisted with land reform and decentralization programs in Liberia. And the extensive history of IU's international development efforts also includes dozens of other projects that span the globe, including the role of the IU School of Medicine in establishing the renowned AMPATH program for the prevention and treatment of HIV and AIDS in Eldoret in Kenya. AMPATH is one of the world's largest, most comprehensive, most sustained, and best-known academic programs for the prevention and treatment of HIV and AIDS. It has continually expanded its successful HIV approach to include the treatment of additional diseases, including diabetes, hypertension, and cancer. The Tobias Center builds on and expands IU's history of involvement in international development, our very long history of involvement in international development. Its faculty and students will work to identify best practices in the delivery of international assistance, while examining metrics to assess the effectiveness of international aid and the best ways to help aid recipients become self-sufficient. The Centre will promote research in innovative approaches to international development. And the Centre in this regard and others, is a truly wonderful addition to IU's School of Global and International Studies. The school was established, of course, in 2012, with the aim of expanding opportunities for education in international studies for our students here at IU, including greater foreign language proficiencies, deeper knowledge of globalization, better understanding of how societies are developing worldwide, the uses and methods of diplomacy, and contemporary issues in international affairs. I want to thank the many distinguished guest moderators and panelists for coming to Bloomington to share your expertise with us, and I want to also welcome Senator Richard Lugar, who is going to be serving later this morning as today's keynote speaker. Senator Lugar is, I think as many people know, the longest serving senator in Indiana's history, and he is one of the nation's most illustrious statesmen, and I would venture one of the greatest statesmen this country has produced since the Second World War. We are honoured that he now serves us as distinguished scholar and professor of practice right here in the School of Global and International Studies. And finally, I just want to say a few words about the two people who made the establishment of the Tobias Center for Innovation in International Development possible, Randy and Deborah Tobias. Randy holds a bachelor's degree from the IU Kelley School of Business, as well as an honorary IU doctorate. I was actually present at the ceremony when Randy got his honorary IU doctorate. He was inducted into the Kelley School's Academy of Alumni Fellows. He received the Distinguished Alumni Service Award, IU's highest accolade for alumni. And Randy has had an extremely distinguished career in business, education, philanthropy, and in government service. As Dean Feinstein mentioned, he served as the nation's first US Global AIDS Coordinator with the rank of Ambassador, and in that role he launched the extremely successful President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, known more commonly as PEPFAR, and directed all US government HIV/AIDS assistance around the world. As we have heard, he later became the first US Director of United States Foreign Assistance with the rank of Deputy Secretary of State, overseeing all foreign assistance activities of the US government. Concurrently, he was named Administrator of the US Agency for International Development. He is, and was, when he was appointed to those positions, the retired Chairman and CEO of Eli Lilly and Company. And prior to his work at Lilly, he was Vice Chairman of AT&T and Chairman and CEO of its subsidiaries, AT&T Communications and AT&T International. And of course, he has given extensive service to Indiana University. He served on the IU Board of Trustees from 2013 to 2016, chairing it most ably from 2014 to 2016. He's also served on the IU Foundation's Board of Directors since 1986. His wife, Deborah, retired as the Operations Director for the United Kingdom and Ireland for the major networking company, Juniper Networks. And prior to that, she'd had executive roles in the technology firms Infotron, Stratacom, and Cisco Systems, all of which are major firms and have been major firms in the development and expansion of the internet worldwide. And she is currently the Vice Chair of the Board of the IU Health Methodist Health Foundation in Indianapolis. And she's a former director of the Catholic Youth Organization of Indianapolis, the Indianapolis City Ballet, and the United Way's Ready to Learn, Ready to Earn child literacy program. Randy and Deborah have been great philanthropic supporters of Indiana University, right across a wide variety of areas, including athletics, the Kelley School of Business, and the IU School of Medicine's AMPATH program, which I mentioned a moment ago. They also established the Deborah F. Tobias Study Abroad Scholarship to increase the number of IU students who go abroad for part of their education and bring home essential knowledge and new perspectives. And I can't help but interpolate here that that study abroad by IU students has grown enormously in recent years, and we now rank at the very highest level in the nation for the absolute number of IU students who study abroad at the time that they graduate. Last year, Deborah started a discussion with me about ways in which she might celebrate Randy's 75th birthday with a gift to IU to recognise his passion for enhancing international development. These discussions led to her gift of $2.5 million to establish the centre. And Randy then started discussions with me about matching Deborah's gift with another $2.5 million. The kind of discussions I love to have, by the way. So on behalf of all of us at Indiana University, I want to again express our deep gratitude to Deborah and Randy for their continued and for their remarkable, generous support of IU that has furthered and will further our missions of excellence in teaching and research, and in particular through this centre, to service to communities around the world. So Randy and Deborah, maybe you could both just stand for our recognition as well, please. One of Indiana University's central missions is to educate students who are engaged and committed global citizens. The development of such citizens is a major function of a responsible university in the modern interconnected world, especially in times like this. This is one of the main reasons IU established the School of Global and International Studies. It brings together and builds upon IU's extensive strengths in international studies, including an extraordinary range of language centres, as well as renowned area studies programs that focus on the histories, cultures, religions, politics, economies, institutions, art and literature of countries and regions around the world. And given the widely varied international development efforts in which Indiana University has been engaged over at least the last 7 decades, it is clear that IU really is the perfect place to establish the Tobias Center for Innovation in International Development. The research in which the Centre's scholars are engaged and will be engaged will identify best practices in development and innovative approaches that will lead to a healthier and more sustainable world. And the many students who are here with us today are a testament to the potential of the Centre and this conference to contribute greatly to IU's ability to educate engaged and committed global citizens. So, welcome to all of you once again. Welcome to Indiana University and to the Centre's inaugural conference. And I trust that all of you will find it to be extremely productive and highly intellectually stimulating. So with that, thank you very much and all the best for a wonderful conference.
As you can imagine, President Mcrobbie has a number of demands on his time, so it's really extraordinary to have a university president come to preside at the opening of a center dedicated to development assistance, and a further indication of the importance and priority that President Mcrobbie has put on IU's global future. So please, everybody, join me again in thanking President Mcrobbie.